I have a friend. She loves food. She actually works in the food industry, and she loves her garden. Once, when we went to visit her, and she took us on a tour of the garden, I pointed out the even finer chicken wire that had appeared at the bottom since our last visit. She told me there was a day in early spring when the first batch of lettuces were waiting to be harvested, and she went out just before dinner to get them warm from the sun and found them nibbled to the ground. Tiny rabbits, small enough to fit through the small circle of chicken wire, had snuck in like a gang of small Peter rabbits. Still, we made a gorgeous meal with what was left. Getting a tour of her garden is always a reminder that tending to a garden involves lots of care, planning, and also surprises. Stephanie's garden is also always proof that what you pay attention to grows. This law of cause and effect, of course, is also true of so much of our lives beyond gardens. Reminds us to pay attention to what we pay attention to in our lives. Malcolm Gladwell, in his bestseller Outliers, The Story of Success, famously surmised from interviews with a music school and reading about Bill Gates' life and a bunch of other sources that what it took to be a master, whether it was of the violin or of computer coding or almost anything, he said, was 10,000 hours of intentional practice. Gladwell's rule is really not entirely scientific or wholly reliable, but it is a great rule of thumb, and it makes a point that mastery of almost anything takes focused time on task. It takes attention. Even though our progress can feel slow as we wend our way through those hours, we will eventually, most likely, get our harvests if we stick in our endeavors. Folks who are observers of human nature would say the same about virtue and the formation of character. Aristotle believed that character was formed by repeated action, by behaving in just ways, for instance, he thought. We would learn what it means to be just, the way a baseball player learns to read a pitch and find the smooth spot, to hit a baseline shot, or if they're lucky, a home run in any given field or weather. Virtue, he said, was a mean between extremes that we learned through practice. Or that was the goal, to practice with care and diligence and attention so that it took root in us. What we pay attention to grows. From our squash game or our free throw to our ability to love or be courageous, everything to grow, to thrive, or have a chance to needs focused attention. But giving something the attention it needs isn't almost ever as easy as it sounds. To begin with, as Maria pointed out in the reading this morning, the world is wildly full of distractions. William James, when he's writing in the late 1800s and early 1900s, talks of the danger of distractions. 50 years earlier, Ralph Waldo Emerson worried about the distracting lure of technology and travel. And in Walden, written in 1854, Henry David Thoreau writes about the invention of the telegraph and how it is leading people to obsess about news and trivial information. They are in danger of brain rot, he writes. I believe that the mind can be permanently profaned by the habit of attending to trivial things, he writes in 1863. And need I point out, my friends, that both Emerson and Thoreau lived in a world where phones never rang and their email never pinged, and all that streamed was the Concord River. The idea of choosing what we will pay attention to is ancient and it is modern, but the abundance, the assault of choices, noise, has made that work of not being distracted and the danger of being shaped by the trivial all the more acute. How do we drown out the noise and focus? Because as the Buddha said, what you think, you become. There are, as all of you know, especially those of you who are immersed in the workforce right now, all the hacks to manage technology. People in their 20s and 30s and 40s that I know who intentionally attend to things like their mental health have all kinds of habits and guardrails they put in place to hem in distraction. And if we don't, in this world that we inhabit, we clear our attention to be captive to the intentions of advertisers and algorithms, none of which I'm pretty sure is coded for our real happiness and well-being. So we choose and figure out how to clear the way to choose. Superficially, we have lots of examples about how choice and focus can lead to success. In this part of the world, we have Silicon Valley prophets like Steve Jobs. And the famous story, which maybe you all know, I certainly remember in the biography of him, of where he comes back to Apple in 1997, having been sidelined, and he calls a meeting, and there's all sorts of things under production. Mediocre, he thought, and certainly the company was underperforming, and he creates a 2x2 rubric: professional, consumer, desktop, portable, and says, pick one for each of those quadrants and forget the rest. That and so much other work scrapped, and how the focus worked, and how the choices weren't popular. As billionaire Warren Buffett once boiled his version of this down to, the difference between successful people, he wrote, and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. We can use that. It's not just business, right? In our choosing, we all know that there is always a holy no or 1,000 of them to each holy yes and sacred yes we say in our lives, don't we? If you've read Elizabeth Gilbert and her book, Eat, Pray, Love, she talks about, in this metaphor I love, that in her effort to figure out how to thrive, she sees that she has been letting too much live in her head rent-free, and so she has this image of a harbor and ideas like ships. 700 times a day she'd say the vow, I will not harbor unhealthy thoughts anymore. And she says, I pictured the harbor of my mind a little beat up, perhaps, a little storm-worn, an open bay, the only access to the island of myself. This island has been through some wars, it's true, but it is committed now to peace under a new leader, me, who has instituted new policies to protect the place. And now, let the word go out across the 7 seas. There are much, much stricter laws on the books about who may enter this harbor. Focus, intention, attention. It's always, in part, a no that stands right up against to bolster and protect the yes we yearn to say. Yes to connections to family, no to phones at the table. Yes to a walk at night to clear our heads and right-size us under the stars, no to another hour on the couch. Yes to being fully alive in the world, no to habits of numbing. Yes to community, my friends, is in some ways a no to consumer mindsets in our world that have us bolt when things get awkward or aren't 100% to our liking. Because guess what? Community, like family, like nation, is messy, but we need it. Yes has its no's. In Barry Schwartz's book, The Paradox of Choice, he says that can feel like it's limiting our freedom and that we don't like it, but the data says that limiting our choice is exactly what leads to greater joy and meaning again and again for us. So, why do we resist the no? I think to own that helps free us up to say it so we can say these powerful yeses in our lives. And last week, I had a reminder that I have periodically to what the no is that's so horrific that I resist it. So I'll share that. In the spirit, Gordon, of deep humanity that I admit to. Last week, I engaged in the regular household ritual, the culling of the magazines. Do any of you know this ritual? If you're like me, you still like to get the paper magazines, hold them in your hands, but oh, how they pile up, don't they? I mean, the museums I support, the Historic Society's magazine, The Argonaut, that tells all about the figures and the richness of this city's background, The Atlantic, so I can be wise and smart, the New York Times, and the New Yorker, so that I can read the cartoons, the denominational magazine, the UU World, alumni magazines, and the pile monthly gets bigger. And I don't have a lot of time to read, not nearly enough time, but I always think I will. I hope I will. My partner and I, we hope we will. So we let them pile up until it is absurd to see them on the side table in our living room, and until I can begin to picture our future as the couple that the fire department has to do an intervention with. So I sit down to clear them out, but can I just pick them up and throw them away? No, I have to flip through them. Is this sounding familiar to some of you? And when I do, I see a lot of articles I am not at all interested in, and that's great. And I see a lot that would be kind of nice to know, and then I see a lot that I would love to read. Everything from the history of the Murdoch family to the poetry and writings of Audre Lorde, and I start ripping them out and flagging them, and then they pile up. And it's never long before it dawns on me, as it has dawned on me every time I do this ritual, but I forget in hubris and ignorance. Vanessa, you do not have time to read all of these. You won't ever have time. Not ever. There is too much else you want and need to do in the world. And in that moment, my friends, let's be clear among us, in that moment, this is not just about the magazines, is it? Can I get an amen? Amen. The magazines, they are a microcosm for what? For life, right? In that moment, I am not sorting magazines, I am facing my mortality. And I am acknowledging that there is not time to do all the things I like or want to do or face and dive into all the things I would love to know and do that I have to choose. And it's not just sorting out the nonsense. It's letting go of things beautiful and possible. And I know that I have to choose or stumble randomly through life. Because life is short, right? And it's too short. And your and my lust for life, all of it, seeing the pyramids, enjoying every live jazz performance, cooking French and Moroccan food, Tolstoy's work and all of Audre Lorde, speaking French, tutoring children, knowing lasting love, learning the samba, becoming enlightened, it will never all be sated. So we have to choose where the universe invites us most deeply, hooks us and lures us to go deep. Sit with our mortality and say, these are the places my time and attention matter most, and I'm going to love that, even if for my whole life, perhaps part of me will always, always, always mourn all the things I had to say no to. The garden can only hold so much, and it needs constant tending to bear a harvest. And so do our lives, have limits and needs. So we choose where we give our attention, and we try our best to choose well and in a reflective, prayerful way. And we ask that we're blessed and supported by the universe to live into those gorgeous intentions. Because it matters. It's our life. I know we're long, but I don't care. Not enough to cut the last poem I wanted to share with you. It's by Palestinian American and Texan poet Naomi Shihab Nye, and it's called The Art of Disappearing. When they say, "Don't I know you?" say, "Nope." When they invite you to the party, remember what parties are like before answering. Someone telling you in a loud voice they once wrote a poem, greasy sausage balls on a paper plate, then reply. If they say, "We should get together," say, "Why?" It's not that you don't love them anymore. You're trying to remember something too important to forget. Trees, the monastery bell at night. Tell them you have a new project. It will never be finished. When someone recognizes you in a grocery store, nod briefly and become a cabbage. When someone you haven't seen in 10 years appears at the door, don't start singing him all your new songs. You'll never catch up. Walk around, feeling like a leaf, knowing you could tumble at any second. Then decide what to do with your time. Blessings. I love you. Amen.